Some people assign those. For me, I just let the students do them as they're preparing for different exams or different assignments for me. And then the third one is really my favorite. This is the teaching tool aspect. And this allows me to really make the classroom much more dynamic. And it really has two components. The first component is a courseware system. And this courseware system is different from any other courseware system you might use because it actually integrates the content with the courseware, so that as you're having them go to the syllabus or use different pieces of the courseware, they're actually going to the content at the same time. And I'll show you how that works. And then there's in-class exercises and interactivity that is incorporated that you can use with the students in the classroom to keep them engaged in what you're doing instead of just listening to you lecture. So this has totally changed the way I have taught. It's revolutionized my pedagogy. I have a much more engaging classroom. When the students walk in, they have to open about 5 or 6 screens for my class. And so the students are totally engaged in the laptop. I'm literally meeting them on their side of the laptops so that they don't have time. We're multitasking, we're toggling between windows, and they don't have time to surf the web. Actually, they do surf the web. What they're doing is they're surfing my materials and the materials I want them to be using. And so it has totally changed the way that I've taught. And you'll hear from a few others, and I'll introduce them as they come up so they can tell you how it's changed the way they've taught as well. I've gone to a number of technology conferences, and I know there's a lot of people out there who really want to use technology in the classroom but don't know how. This product, if you teach either legal research or legal writing or both, can allow you to do that. So let me just show you a little bit. When I usually do these presentations, it takes me about an hour and a half to show a lot of the different features in the book. I only have about 15 minutes, so I'm just going to show you a few of them, and then the rest of the panel will show you some of the things that they like. But what you're seeing now is basically the home page. And these are the 6 main content rooms. So these are research rooms, these are writing rooms, and this is the grammar and the citation room. The first room I'm going to take you into, though, is the Courseware Program room that I just mentioned. And this is actually my live, well, the students aren't really on anymore, my course for the last year. And you can design these any way you want. They work with folders. I go by units. Some professors go by weeks. Lots of different ways to design these. But I'll show you a few of the features from my course. For example, when you go into the syllabus, you'll see, here's my syllabus. There's lots of different ways to do these, and we have some templates so that people can work these kind of syllabi into their own courses. But as you see, the students link directly into the readings. So if this was their reading for the day, they click directly into the reading. This is the content, as we call it. And then there's other links, and there's sample pages. These are all samples, and some people will show you some of those. But as the students, they read, they click out, and they're back to the next link. And so these are links, any links you want. For me, most of them go into the content of the book so that they do the reading that way. Other things you can put in there is really any other external links that you want to put in, or links to your own documents. So for example, I also put up Georgetown's law library in one of my first classes so that when they go to the library, they know where to go. So any of this can be linked, and it makes it one-stop shopping for the students. They go to the courseware and the content at the same time. Now the other thing that I put up in here is all my assignments. And these assignments you can make really rich in terms of multimedia. You can put in video, you can put in JPEGs, you can put in PowerPoints. Basically anything you can think of you can put up. So for example, for me, my first memo, I really try to get the students understanding what the client's issue is. And so I have a video where the student will actually sit in and listen to me interview the client. So I'm not going to maximize this, but you get the idea of the students sitting, listening to the client, and the students really kind of now get a visual on the client. They become involved. I've put up police reports. I've put up PowerPoints. I've put up emails. Anything you can think of to make the experience a little bit richer for the students, so that when they're getting their assignments, they actually feel like they're getting a legal folder instead of just a fact pattern. Now the students upload their assignments directly into this courseware program, and for them what they get is a check mark. It's actually a blue arrow for the upload, and then when they upload it they get a check mark. For me, I get this reporting function that has all my students, and you see here they're alphabetically. I like to go by submit date because then I see who has not turned it in and who in red has turned it in late. For those students, usually about 15 minutes after an assignment is due, I will open this up, and for any student who has not turned it in, I will click on his email address and shoot him an email right away and make sure that everything's okay. And then this is a way for me to keep track. If you looked at my next reporting system, this was my first assignment. My next one, I don't think anybody was late because of those emails. It sent a pretty good message that I'm watching and it doesn't take me a couple days to see who's missing. So that works pretty well also. Now, there's a lot of other things in here. I'm not going to show you all of them. There's a couple of features that a lot of the professors like. There are 3 banks. The personal bank takes all your material. So anything you put into teaching law, you have your own personal bank. There's a shared bank. Anybody who's using teaching law can go shopping in the bank. So if you're looking for a research project on administrative law, or you're looking for a memo on intentional infliction of emotional distress, you can go find these in the bank. You have an option as a user of putting things in the bank. So if you want to put something in the bank, you can, but you don't have to share your own documents. So anybody can shop, and then you have an option of sharing. The school bank is, if you have a number of teachers using it at your school, it's set up just for your school. It works as a shared drive, but you don't have to be at the office to get to it. And that has worked really well for adjunct programs where a director will just put up a document or a syllabus that everybody's using, or also for me, I just had 3 new people last year who were all using teaching law, so anything I used I put in the school bank, and then they could just take it down if they wanted to take it down. And you can see you can sort it by author, you can sort it by type, or by date, and then you can add teaching notes so that you can remember what the problems were with teaching it. And all you do is click here and it gets sent to your personal bank. And then you send it off to your workspace. One quick thing I want to show you before I leave the workspace, because I do want to show you some of the content, is just it's very simple to design a folder. All you do is create a folder. We can name it anything we want. We'll name it CALI. We'll create it. We then have a folder. And the folder, anything that's in blue is pending. It means the students cannot see it. So you can design a way without the students knowing you're in there. And then you can create a file. And I'm not going to actually start creating anything because that could take us a little time because there's so many fun things we can do. But I'll show you how this works. Whatever you type in here becomes HTML. So you can copy and paste a Word or WordPerfect document and just put it in, or you can link to a PowerPoint, you can just upload a JPEG, anything you want to do you can put it in here. And I don't know if you can see some of these little pop-ups. This is your image manager that allows you to put in your JPEGs, you can put in tables. If any of you know how to use Flash, you could create your own Flash animations and put them in. Video, there's a media manager, so you can put in your own video. We also have some we have a library of some snippets of video so that if you didn't want to create your own video, we have some that are here if you wanted to use some of our problems. There's a document manager which allows you to link to any of your own documents or any of ours. So it works quite well. With the hyperlink, we have all the links to teaching law in the hyperlink, so that if you wanted to link to anything within the content area, you could do so quite easily. All you do is click on the hyperlink manager, and every possible branch, you just keep branching until you get to the page you want, and you set up your link. So that works pretty nicely as well. Once you create your assignment, you can set the dates, the date it becomes available, the date the draft is due. In the new version that Aspen is putting out in the next couple weeks, there's also anonymous submitting of grading as well. So if you have a program that uses anonymous grading, that works there. So, whoops. See, it's very good at letting you not leave without saving, but we don't need to save this. Okay, so that's the workspace. And I'm going to go into, I only have a few more minutes, so I'm going to show you a few things in each room just so you have a sense of what's in here. In research sources, one of my goals was to allow the students to use this as a resource, not just as a textbook, so they can actually do research while they're learning about how to do research. So for example, they can click on any state, we'll choose Virginia, and find the Constitution, the statutes, the court rules, administrative law, and go to the home page as well for a whole bunch of different information. So I have actually had the students search this free website before they go to Lexis or Westlaw for projects. And we'll do this in class, or I'll give it to them as an assignment. And each state is different depending on, you know, how good their search engine is. There's a navigation bar in each room that branches to as deep as you need to go. I like to show my students not just how to research online, but also how to research in the books. And so there's these sample pages peppered throughout, and I think you're going to see more of these in a minute as well. But the students do like seeing the actual pages before they go to the library. Each room has what I call an interactivity box at the bottom of the page. So here's where the students are going to find these quizzes, self-assessments. These are what I call cheat sheets. Aspen likes to call them quick references. But they're easily printable kind of cheat sheets on each section. And the students really do seem to like those as well. Peppered throughout as well are some video. For example, in research testimonials, this is video of students talking to students about their research strategy. Let's see if I can. Okay, as she's talking, the text is coming up below. All of these are different students so that they can listen and get a number of different viewpoints on research strategy. And as she speaks, the students can link to some of the other links if they don't understand what she's talking about. And this goes into some of how the students kind of telescope in and out. They can go to any of these other links and they just keep going as the student's speaking. And that kind of plays into their digital learning, and they like hearing from other students instead of just from me, and research process, writing process, those kind of things that the students really do like to hear about. I want to show you some of the self-assessments that I really like as well. These I do assign for the students, and you'll see how they work. These actually report back to the professor. So for example, this is a grammar one, and the student clicks to the first one, decides, okay, I think that's right. Well, it's wrong. It should be capitalized. If they want more on capitalization, it takes them to that part in the grammar rules on capitalization. And if they still want more, they can take a quiz on capitalization. Again, this layering where the students can go as deep as they want to get as much information as they want. And these are the type of quizzes that are peppered throughout, and the also the kind of self-assessments that are out there. The students just keep plugging through from one question to the next, and then they get the pop-up at the end that tells them their score, breaks it down into category, and it shoots a score to me, so I can look at the, here I can show you this too, I can look at the students' scores either individually or as a general population in the class. Whoops. Or you know what, I'm in the wrong, let me go here. I was in a different class because now I have a number of workspaces because I've used it a number of years. But when you go into the editing, the self-assessment results, you get the scores individually and then also cumulatively. So you can go through and see how the class is doing as a whole, and that allows you to kind of gauge your classroom where you need to target it. One other thing I'm going to show you, and I think Rachel's going to show you this in a little more detail, one other thing the students really do like is annotated samples. And these are samples that allow you, this is something I do in the classroom with the students, is really work back and forth on material with them. So I will have them read the question presented out loud, and somebody always will say, that's too long, and so we'll actually talk about what to omit, and then we'll take it out of the text and we'll read it again. And so we'll plow through this whole memo, kind of asking different questions as we go, or focusing just on topic sentences. You can see we can do that. We can focus just on analysis. We can focus just on the conclusions along the way. And so it's very good for the students to get this piece by piece working and analyzing a piece of writing. And then all of these have comments so that the students can go through and look at some of the annotations on this memo as well. So these are peppered throughout to help the student really become more engaged with the material. And it seems to be working quite well. And the first time I used one of these, the student said, can you do more? And so I just keep creating more and more of these annotated samples. So those are just a few of the things. What's going to be difficult is that with all of us showing, you're going to get a number of different things, but not the whole picture. So if anybody does want more, Tony, I think I'm in your site all of a sudden. If anybody does want more and they want to see more and spend some time looking at this, actually Susan Henkin, who's the director here of Legal Research and Writing, has offered us her Writing Center. So if anybody wants to come upstairs to the 4th floor in the Writing Center to see more of this, we can certainly let you play around with it if you want. So now I'm going to introduce Rachel Spooner. Let me get to a fresh website. Rachel is an adjunct at Northeastern, where she's teaching an advanced legal writing course. So there are some people who use it for just writing, and it can be purchased as a just writing unit. Some people use it for just research. I use it for both, and some are using it for advanced writing or advanced research.
I am in. Thank you. So I come at teachinglon.com with two relatively unique perspectives. First as an adjunct and then as an advanced legal writing professor, although I'm not sure how advanced everyone is in my classroom, but that's okay. So first let's talk about why this product has revolutionized my life as an adjunct. Adjuncts are either the laziest or most hardworking people that you know. And it really depends on your perspective. But all I can tell you is this has made my life so much more efficient because everything is in one place. I used to, like many people on this panel, I'm sure will say they did the same, have to make sure I had my handouts, photocopy like crazy, and when you're not part of the day-to-day faculty at a university, that has an extra layer of complication. And I know that many, many legal research and writing professors are adjuncts, and there are many adjunct programs, and this online book is very helpful for eliminating many of the problems that adjuncts face. So I thought I would point out some of the things that I use that make my life a lot easier. Okay, so the first is that I never have to bring anything into the classroom except make sure the computer is working. Okay, as Diana pointed out, there's lots and lots of samples. Law students love samples. They just crave anything that someone other than themselves has created so that they think it has some air of authority. So I certainly spend a lot of time using in addition to the formal requirements of each of these types of legal documents, we have memos, we have briefs, letters, motions, and you can see that for each of those, there's every formal requirement with its own example and an explanation of what it is. So for instance, question presented, okay? There's an explanation of what a question presented is, and then of course there's a couple samples. But in addition to that, these annotated samples have really been what the students have enjoyed the most, and what I use most often in the classroom, because it allows us to focus in. And it allows the students to engage because they must read the pop-ups, right? And so I use them very often And it allows me to, in a given week, just focus on topic sentences for a portion of my class, and then you just have to highlight topic sentences, and there they are magically for the students. So that has made my life a lot easier as an adjunct, just eliminating the need to have to bring handouts, slides, PowerPoints, all those other things as well. Another example of a way that my life has become a lot easier is that I used to prepare PowerPoint slides for each class's lecture, to the extent I lecture. But now I really don't have to do that, because for those students of mine that claim to be visual learners, I can just put some of the content of teachinglaw.com on the screen, and they can follow along with it if they have that visual need. So for example, there are some quick references, I think Diana referenced some of these, that they can use them for their own quick reference, but sometimes I find they're quick enough that they are a good bullet point list for the students to follow along with. Okay, so for instance, when we're talking about case analysis, I go through a detailed lecture with them and go through some examples and exercises on do's and don'ts of case comparisons, but being able to just put this on the screen without having to prepare it myself is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And the students, I find, and I'm sure many of you do, this is the way they think, because this is the way they're learning in small windows. So it's very helpful for them as well. Another example, and perhaps one that's more interactive that they always ooh and ah over, is in editing and rewriting. Okay? For example, we have lots of good exercises and samples that show the students what they should be working on in their rewriting and editing process. Okay? So I spend a lot of time on conciseness, and you'll see that there are lots of exercises here that they enjoy doing in the classroom for working on conciseness. And it's such a difference now versus when I used to just lecture or hand out one of those grammar books, and I would assume they were looking it up, but I know they never actually were looking any of those grammar rules up. But now I can stand in the classroom, and this is even with second and third years, which is the group that I teach, and say, okay, you all think that you write concisely. When's the last time you wrote by means of? And they all do it. We all do. And by just moving my little mouse, I'm able to show the correct way to write that in a concise manner. And this really allows for them to sort of shout out answers and get involved, and they get kind of a kick out of it because it shows the answer right there as I go through it. And again, as an adjunct, not only does it keep them entertained, which is important for any professor, but I haven't had to do any of this work, okay, which, again, we're both lazy and hardworking, depending on how you look at it. So it's made my life a lot easier. The last type of class exercise that I use, so really I use it as in lieu of PowerPoint. I use it for interactive exercises just by going through the substance. And then I also use it for exercises that we break up into groups or pairs or individual work, and I say, okay, now work on this for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, depending on what it is, and then we regroup and go over it. We've all done it if you teach research and writing, but now it's all in one place, and the advantage of that as well is they can go back and look at it, and I find very often they do that. They go back and look at it after we've done it in the classroom, and then they're able to follow up with additional questions, whereas if it was just a handout, they lose it, they throw it away, they don't keep it, and they don't have that ability. So just for example, under writing and rewriting in our substance, one of the class exercises is about going from objective to persuasive writing. So I spend the first half of my Northeastern works on quarters, so we have 10 weeks together. So I spend the first half talking about memos and objective writing, and the second half about persuasive writing. And this exercise allows me to work on that transition together. We just break off, they all rewrite it themselves, then we get together and say, who has a good idea, why did that work, why does that not work? And again, it's nice for me because it's all in one place, but it's additionally nice for the students because it's all in one place and they have all of that information together in one place for future reference. Just a few words, because I'm going to be out of time soon since there are so many of us. I want to talk about why this has also been a very helpful tool as an advanced legal writing professor. I wasn't sure when I started with this ebook how it would work for that course, because I think I actually was the first one to use it for anything other than first years. But it works wonderfully because they come to you as second and third years at all different points of development as legal writers and as lawyers. And the substance is such that you can focus on certain things and change. I change every quarter what I focus on. And the self-assessments is a big part of that. So, for example, I always assign all the self-assessments, and sometimes they do them. But when they do, it's quite helpful. I just assigned it, so, oh, this is someone else's, but that's okay. It's very helpful because what I actually do is the night before class, I go through these results. And you can see if you scroll to the bottom, they give you percentages. And I then can teach to that particular group. I cover the blue book, but if I covered the blue book the way first-year writing programs did, they would all want to, stick a pencil in my eye because they've learned it before, okay? But if I'm able to do this, I can see they know the basics, they're all getting the short form of citation wrong under the self-assessment quiz, and that's what I teach. And they feel good because I'm not wasting their time, and I feel good because they're actually interested in what I'm teaching. And they see that I'm actually using the book and the work that they're doing as well. So it's been helpful in that way. So I think that's it. Let me turn this over to our next speaker. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Ken Rudolf. He's the director of the Law Library at LaVerne. He's been using this. And try this one. Ken has been using this for just research with a first-year program. And currently, for the version that's up there now, Ken got the whole package even though he was just using just research. For next year, Aspen has split it, and so that if you were just going to use research, the writing portion would actually be grayed out so that the students couldn't click on it. That should work pretty well, and it allows them to be more flexible with the pricing as well. The new version, if anybody wants to see that, we can show that to you upstairs as well. You ready?
Yeah, I'm in. Well, Diana said I teach a standalone legal research class. We'd actually hoped that maybe the writing instructors would use part of it, and they were so busy they didn't ever do that. But we did the research part, and there are a lot of good research books out there, and I was really happy with a lot of the research books. And as a librarian, one of the things I like about research books are the sample pages, because it shows what the books look like, and sample screenshots. You know what? The students don't. When they read, they just skip over them, and they don't look at them at all. And so when I saw what was happening here with sample pages, that was the first thing that attracted me to this. And I'm going to go into my week 3 to begin with. We have one class each week. We don't have a lot of time together. And so I can set up each assignment. I link all the readings that I want them to do each week. And For example, if we look at federal cases, when I introduced case law, and first of all, they can read about the reporters, and it's not a lot of reading, it's kind of bullet point reading, so they get exactly what they want and what they need. And then you can sort of dig down and look at anything farther that you want. So if you want to talk about district court cases, you can look there. And here you actually have a link to sample pages. And you've got a page, or several pages from a federal supplement here. And with the little blue lines, you can just mouse over and you see exactly what it is. It describes the name of the case, the summary of the case, the head notes, over here with the text of the opinion. So it's interactive, and I think the students remember it. They're interested in doing that because they're doing something and not just passively looking at a page. Place. Oh, is this a?
Yeah, that's a movement.
Okay. The other thing, before I leave this week, before I adopted teaching law, I had set up my own tutorials on Blue Book, and so I can link into those just really easily. And right down here at the bottom, I have my tutorial 3 that they can go in to link. And that's on my on my website at ULV, and it's not on teaching law, but I can still use that, all that other material that I had before. But I'm going to go back to go to week 10, because this is you change things every time you teach, and I always started with secondary sources, and now I do secondary sources at the end. And I just really loved what happened here with am I in, which one am I in? This, you know what, it looks, I'm in the fall class, and I should have been in the spring class. There we are.
So for those of us with multiple workspaces over the years, you can go back to any of the old workspaces and grab information, or save a whole workspace to the next year as well.
And so here I had them reading on secondary sources, and one of my favorites is ALR, and students really have trouble. It's really hard to explain to them what ALR is in a lecture. And so here is a nice little summary of what ALR is, and then you have the sample pages for ALR. And there's so many things going on: the title, the annotation, the scope note. And this goes on for several different pages, so it talks about the table of contents and the article outline. And so you can actually show this in class, and it becomes much more clear to the students. And we don't have a laptop requirement, so maybe 50 or 60% of my students in class have a laptop. They can follow along if they want, but I can also project them on the screen. And so if they don't have a laptop, they're still seeing what's happening. And the ALR is really very complete. It's the research sources, and then you can find the index, the statutory text, the table of cases, and then finally into the article. You can show them the table of contents, where what I find students don't really get is how ALR is organized, and so they have all the cases on one side put together and all the cases on the other side put together. When you look at the table of contents, that becomes very clear, much easier than when you're trying to explain it in class.
Excuse me, Ken. Yeah. On those pages where you have the samples, where you put in your own text, I take it as possible to put in the hyperlink text there too, if you wanted to direct them someplace else.
Well, this is part of. Oh, you mean I put my own links in the assignment, but these are this is part of the content of the course.
Okay. I mean, in the actual sample page you just showed, you had some text alongside of.
No, that's part of the course.
That's part of the course.
That's part of the course.
Okay.
Here are some activities that you can do, exercises with ALR. There's also a short little quiz you can do with ALR. So after they've finished reading ALR, they can you ask them a few questions, and they can click an answer, and they get an immediate response whether they're right or wrong. It's a lot more effective than standing up in class and saying, "And why would you use ALR?" And then you get all these blank looks at you. But if they've had a chance to go through this exercise, they've done something, they've been able to think about why they're using ALR. I have the pleasure of teaching Blue Book in my research class. I think the writing people gladly got rid of that and put it into research. This happened before I got to the university, so I don't know who made that decision at some point in the hoary past. But anyway, and so I've tried a number of things, and I'm being really harsh with my students, and we have Blue Book quizzes about half of the semester over the tutorials. And you know, having those turned in having them do them at the end of class in pen and paper, and how do you really see where those spaces, you know how Blue Book spaces are important. So I experimented just 1 week this time. I'm going to do more with it now. I'm going to do all of my Blue Book quizzes online here, so that the students will have the document. I'll have the document to start, about 10 minutes before the end of the class, so they can't get into it early. Since we don't have a laptop requirement, I'm actually going to excuse the people who don't have laptops to go down to the library, the computer lab, to finish the quiz, and then they'll be able to do the quiz and submit it electronically, and then I'll have a nice version to grade that I can read and not have to guess what the students are trying to do. And so that's sort of where I'm going. I'm going to try to do more of these kinds of interactive submissions online. The other thing we've been starting this last year is we have, in addition to the lecture, we have labs where we break the class into smaller groups, and they can walk to the library with their laptop, and they can have the questions right there. They can type in the answers if they're doing a book assignment, or if they're doing an online assignment, they can have the online assignment open. With the book assignments, we always do them in groups, and so you can have one person sort of being the scribe for the group while someone else is opening the books, and that collaborative learning seems to work really well. And so, the first year, sort of finding out where things are and what works, and now this next year I'm going to try to incorporate more of the online submissions into the program. I was really curious. We have this very small class that starts in January. I should have done this at the end of the fall semester, but this small class that starts in January. And so I decided I want to know, how do our students really relating to this? So I did just like a 5-question survey at the end of my course in May. And my last question was, would you have preferred a real print textbook? And 2/3 of the class said no. So, and this included some of the old students who were coming back as a second career, and yet 2/3 of the students said no, they preferred the online textbook. And so that was a real, I thought, vote of confidence for this product. Okay.
Okay. And as Tony is coming up, I can add more to what Ken just said. Because there is 1/3 who still wants something in print, Aspen and I were putting together a print companion for the students. It won't have all the interactivity, but it will have that actual content reading, so that the students who still want to read some of the longer pages online can do that, and then it'll indicate where in fact all the interactivity is in the ebook, so that they can go and do that later. Okay, so with that, Tony Chavez is next. Tony teaches legal research and writing at UC Davis, and he is going to be the next director. I'm allowed to say that, right? Okay. At Davis. And Tony is using it in a similar way that I am for both legal research and writing for a first-year program.
The thing, starting point to start probably is to let you know where I started with this. I first met Diana on October 18th, plus or minus a couple of days, at a conference where she did her presentation that she was telling you about. And I thought this looked really great. And the problem was, do I want to try to incorporate it into a class that's starting in just a few months, or do I want to put it off and wait until after the summer, back in August, when we started in the fall? And I really wanted to start getting my hands into this and see how it operated. But we've got, the way our classes are designed, we've got 67 students we're responsible for, and TAs can do none of the grading. So once the class begins, I would like constantly have stacks of papers. And so the reason why I'm started giving you all this background, besides woe was me, but also because I didn't have a lot of time to really learn the website. If it was going to be complicated, if there were things that were going to require a lot of studying to figure out how to operate it, this was not going to work out very smoothly. And it turned out that I finished my grades, inputted the grades while I was watching the Rose Bowl, which most of us will know was on January 1st. And our classes began January 11th. And that was really the downtime that I had to learn the website and to figure out how to use it and be off and running. And I found it, after like a day, and I'm not like any techie by any stretch of the imagination. I can use Word and I can use Excel and I can Google things, and that's pretty much about it. I found the website to be very, very user-friendly, and to the extent that I, in my lack of knowledge, had problems, the tech support was great. Tech support is available 24 hours a day. You can send emails, you can call them up. I'd call them up because I had classes on Monday, so I'm probably sure many of us realize that means Sundays are spent often in the office preparing for class. I could contact tech support on Sunday afternoons, and they were there. So just to give you some sort of, if you have any reservations about, are you capable of doing this, I'm almost sure you're able to get your way through it. What I want to do is show you something that sort of evolved through my first day of using this website, and something I found very helpful throughout. What I did is, in preparing for the first class, I wanted to, well, since it was sort of the break, I had the same students that I had in the previous semester. What I wanted to do is, we're going to sort of hit the ground running, and there were some things I wanted to cover in the first class. I had sort of given them a preview or a commercial that we're probably going to use the website, but I wanted to sort of let them know this is what some of the things are in the website. Okay, now let's start on to the usual class stuff. So what I did was, there were some particular parts of the site. There was some debriefing from their last papers at the end of the previous semester that I wanted to do. And I was sort of thinking, well, how am I going to get all this done? And how, I'm a former trial attorney, and just in general, I'm a nervous type of guy. So I want to make sure that there weren't any things that were blowing up on me in the first day of using the website. So how can I sort of like tie these things down so I don't have anything to worry about? And what I did was I ended up creating links for everything I wanted to cover in class. And that sort of just became a very helpful thing that I could do. And so what I have now is I have links, what I would eventually do for class. I would have links to things within teaching law. I would have links to outside video clips. I'll show you a brief one or two of those. Similar to Diana, I believe, what I tell my students is I've never had a client walk into me and hand me a one-page statement of facts from which I could then go litigate their case. And so I was going to be damned if I was ever going to do that for them. And so when she said she uses, Schubel and a police report, my first semester, the problem was generated through a whole series of emails. What I did in the second semester, I'll actually show you a brief piece of it, is I interviewed one of the other attorneys, one of the other law LRW professors as the client, and that was the basis, and then there were some other pieces that were coming in. But the other pieces that were documents or whatever, I would link those in through the site. So everything is here. And the other thing that, a couple of things that this did. One is it sort of helps me basically create a script, more or less, for class, so that everything that I wanted to cover is here, and I know where it's going to be. Second, if a student wants to go back and review something, the student knows all they have to do is go to this hyperlinks page, and everything that we've covered in class is there. Or third, God forbid, if a student actually didn't go to class, this is a quick way to sort of find out a lot of the stuff that we covered. So I'm going to just show you this literally. This is the hyperlinks page for this past semester. And you can see it goes on. Some days there's only a couple of things that we're covering, which means probably having lecture day. Other times there could be 7, 8, whatever. To make this discussion a little bit more manageable, what I've done is I've taken the hyperlinks. This is from my class. I make hyperlinks 2, which is a trimmed down version of some of the things that I specifically would like to cover in the remaining minute and a half that I've got. On the first day, one thing that I put in, I figured, well, if I'm going to instruct them through the website and let them know things that I may not direct them to, but they might find helpful, or if they just get lost, I put in the sitemap. So they'll know where, if they ever get stuck and they don't know where something is, they know they can always go back to the first day's links, they can see the sitemap, and they should be able to hopefully cure whatever problems they've got. The Blue Book citation self-assessment, because this was the first day after the first semester when all of their Blue Booking shortcomings were now exposed to their teacher and also for their grade. I thought the Blue Book citation self-assessment was going to be an appropriate assignment. The other version that had is I put a due date for the next class, which meant that all of them were now motivated to log on to the website and do the registration process and complete it on time. So that was helpful. One thing that I picked up through watching Diana's class once is she...
Wendell, I think it works best. You think of the rough kind of thing you want to say about jotting on a piece of paper.
One of the things that she often uses and that I picked up too, and this is a commercial, I guess, for Brian Garner, which many of us have heard, he's gone through and interviewed Supreme Court justices, Justice Breyer, law school professors, attorneys, and gotten their thoughts on a whole range of legal writing topics. How do you research? What do you write? What's persuasive writing? Oral argument. And Diana, I think, uses them more or less the same way I've adopted them. They are obviously authoritative sources. There's someone besides Tony, so that if they start tuning me out, well, here's another source, and maybe you can listen to him, or maybe also that person saying the same thing I am. And so it helps to reinforce some points that I may be making in class. So I don't do this every class, but probably about out of 15 more courses, I think I put about 15 of these in. And so it was sort of another opportunity to give them another source for some information. And also, well, that's not it. I think I've just logged out of myself. No, there we are. Also, some of the things that we've talked about in this conference, it gives them an audio visual, which is something that they're used to in their everyday lives, and something that is a little bit more interesting than just a standard book. Let me see, I've got 30 seconds, so I won't show you the client interview. I did want to show you that, because it lets you see what one of my colleagues is like. I told him he was going to be the client, that we were going to, there were certain things we were going to do for a contract/statute of frauds, initial problem that was really going into jurisdiction, and that he was going to be running the business, but he could choose what it is. And he showed up, we were going to film it in my class, in my office. He shows up with sunglasses on. He didn't tell me what the industry was going to be, so I said, hi, how are you, and how's it going? What do you do? He says, well, I'm a producer of Japanese hardcore rap. I would have anticipated coming up. So, and if you see him wearing the sunglasses, as soon as the picture comes up, everyone starts laughing. But I'll just sort of end it there in terms of what I actually did in class. As a sort of generic commercial, non-Aspen related, I will be teaching an advanced level course on the Voting Rights Act in September, in the spring. I used to litigate voting rights courses at cases for about a decade. Aspen doesn't have an e-book on the Voting Rights Act, but I am so used to having all of my materials this way. It's so much easier for me, as everyone said. You don't have to be making stacks of copies of stuff, because of course with the Voting Rights Act, there are cases that are new, there are a lot of law review articles that you'd like to kick in. This is just so much easier. It helps to coordinate the class a lot better. I can't imagine teaching a course without something like this. Obviously, I'm going to be limited in what I can do for that course, but for legal research and writing, this is so much. It gives you so much power and so many alternatives that you don't normally have. That it's really something. One way or another, I encourage you to at least look at the technological options that are now available to you.
Do you want to show your other video? Or
Yeah.
You can probably get to that quickly.
Yeah.
You guys want to see my calling? That one?
Or that one, or I know you were going to show the good video, the good oral argument.
Yeah. Okay, this is one that's in the website. It's about oral argument, and one of Diana's TAs volunteered to do this. And she gives two examples. The first one is, she breaks all the rules that we tell them they're not supposed to do an oral argument. And as soon as you see her, you'll understand.
Is it work?
So there she is, all slouchy.
Now, I'm assuming that you'll get past the case, so how many words before?
And so, it fortunately does have some comedy to it. It's a little bit exaggerated, but, these guys sort of need the exaggerated version because it was too subtle, we'll just blow right past them. And what we did in class is I played it all the way through the first time, and then I went back to the beginning, and we stopped it just like that. In fact, I think what we did is we stopped it as soon as she came up and said, okay, what about posture? And then as soon as she said, well, you don't need to know about that, so I'll move on. Then we stop again. And it was a way that we could just, identify everything that went wrong as it went wrong. And I think the students really got a lot of, it's something to sort of tell them about it. It's another thing when they actually see it and when they see that type of visual. And then, fortunately, I think her name's Hannah, after this, they have her doing it the right way, so she gets to rehabilitate herself. And the students wanted to see, well, what is the good way to do it? And it gives that example, too, so it's very helpful.
The other nice thing that I liked about the video is we used the Georgetown's new Supreme Court Institute's courtroom, which looks just like the Supreme Court. And so when you pan out to the judges, it actually looks, they're not the justices, but it's a pretty cool scene. It looks as real as I think we could get it to look. What's been great about this panel and all the other people that are using teaching law is we've been bouncing ideas off of each other. Tony came to watch me teach, and then after watching me, he suggested this outline feature that he uses. And so I went back and started in my classroom, and I'll tell you my students really appreciate this too, is in my case files, let's see if I'm in mine. No, I think we're out of mine. But I'll take some questions too as I'm pulling it up again. But what I did is I created outlines for each class. So as Tony has a scrolling list, mine comes up date by date. And so that for every class, the students come in and they get a outline for that class, which includes what we're doing in class, as well as all the links for what we're doing in class. And so it's the same kind of idea. You see from, this is my announcement, there's also an announcement feature where when the students open up the book, they get your announcement. But my outlines are right here. And so for me, I had a folder on outlines, and as you scroll down, you see there's one for each class. And let me just click on a class. This class was towards the beginning of the semester. An outline of what we're doing in class, and then all the links. And that way when the students come in, they're all linked in before the class starts. And so as we move and toggle from one window to the next, everybody's with me and I don't have to wait. Which Tony was watching them from the back of the room and telling me there was a little bit of lag time, which I didn't even know about. And so as we've all been communicating different ways to use this, it's been fun. My teaching has gotten better, and everybody else is kind of benefiting from this community of innovative teachers. So it really has been a good experience, I think, all around. Anybody have questions for anybody? Yeah?
Since you talked about citations earlier in Blue Book, I was wondering, is it compatible with Allwood?
Yes, it has both Allwood and Blue Book. Yeah, there's a section for each one, there's a self-assessment for each one, quizzes. Other questions? Susan.
I think this is for Rachel, because when you were talking about the students calling out answers the way you were using some of the quizzes, do they have it pulled up on their screen and therefore could they cheat? Or could they sort of look ahead to what the right answer was?
It's a mixed group in my classroom as to who brings laptops. We don't require laptops. We're very low tech. Right. So could they cheat? Maybe. But we do it so quickly that,
So I guess as a more general question for everybody, is there an extent to which when the students have it up on their own screen, they can jump ahead or do something different or somehow interfere with the message that you want, the way you want to be teaching?
They can, and the way I've worked around this, and anybody else can answer, is if I'm going to be using something in a class, I don't assign it for the class. If I want that punch, I don't assign it for that class. I'll just use it. And so the first time they're bringing it up, and they're not really checking things out ahead of time because we move so quickly from one window to the next. So as it comes up, sure, maybe by the time we get to the 7th thing that I have them click on, they're in on it. And then they start answering. Then they all get the answers right, and you think you're doing a great job. But at least they're then using the source. And then I'll walk away from the source and go to the next screen and tell them to finish up at home so that they get that they can get a lot out of it, but I'm not going to waste the class time that they can then use on their own. So that's been my trick, is just not assigning it as a reading until later.
And with the exception of the grammar exercises that have, a correct, 1 or 2 word answer, all the things with sample rewrites, even if they're looking ahead, we don't just say, okay, here's the sample rewrite. We actually pick apart the sample rewrite. Okay, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? So any looking ahead they're doing doesn't hurt the classroom environment too much.
The other thing is a lot of the adopters have asked for more exercises, and so some of the things I've been creating are exercises that will appear in the content pages, but then the answers will be in the bank. And so that you can post them when you want to post them, if at all. You might want to use your own answers and post those instead of mine. But so that there'll be a lot of exercises in there that are answer-less until and at what time you want to post them, and then you can get them from the teacher's bank. Question?
Well, I've used it now, and I'm not using it now, but it was because we were using it as sort of an LLM program where I was trying to reduce, so only parts of it that were really relevant. And I couldn't convince, for the price, it just was not worth it for the parts, which is number 1 concern, the pricing aspect. But 2, and this was a problem I had being new to it, I'm sitting there saying, here I am learning another system when I'm already using Twin or I'm already using Blackboard. I'm forcing my students in one class to be different than everything else that they're going to be using for online courses. Can you address that concern? Why would I want my students to learn this in their first year legal writing program as a structure when I'm going to be using in all their other first years a Twin structure or a Blackboard structure or whatever we're using institutionally?
Yeah, the main difference is that this integrates the content, and so that the students have it all in one place. Some people who have used it both with Twin, so that, for example, if they want a discussion room or the clickers, which we don't have in teaching law, they can do that in Twin and everything else in teaching law. And so when they go to Twin, there's a link to the teaching law site. So that's how some of the other professors have worked around it, because they like this content-driven platform. So that in Twin, you only put up your own material. Here, you put up your own material and the actual content, and you can weave it seamlessly so that the students don't even know what's yours versus what's in the book if you don't want them to. You can obviously tell them or have that look a little bit different. From the students' perspective, mine have used all different things in different courses. For them, it's nothing they need to learn. They just click. It's just going to a different website to click and get the material. So I haven't seen any kind of learning curve for the students, and that has not been a problem. For the teachers, yes, they need to either stop using Twin for this particular course or integrate them both through a link on Twin to teaching law or Blackboard. And a lot of teachers have done that. So I don't know if that answers it. I don't know if any of you ever started with a different courseware program. Georgetown has its own courseware program, and I just abandoned that altogether because this one did so much more, and I could organize it my own way instead of the way the courseware program was set up. Does anybody else have any? Yeah.
I think pedagogically it's good to have the students learn different types of platforms, because when they get out there you just really don't know what they'll get involved with. One thing I use for one of my classes is just PB Wiki that's free, and I explain to the students that when you get out there you can use this and you don't have to be under any monopolistic powers.
The other thing, to answer your pricing question, by splitting it now into just research, just writing, or research and writing, they've changed the pricing arrangement because of that. Yes, another question.
How do you see the relationship to CALI exercises?
That's a good question. There are a lot of peppered throughout here. There's multiple choice quizzes, there's drag and drops, there's the self-assessments, there's tutorials, but they're all built into the content so that they're woven together into one unit as opposed to something else written by somebody else or a number of different authors. So they're similar in terms of the way they work. You click, you get an answer, or you drag and drop. It's just combined into one unit. Anybody else have any thoughts?